Welcome to Shift, an exclusive podcast by DSN. I'm your host, Blake Mallon, and this is where high-performing entrepreneurs and experts share their most powerful shifts in mindset, skill set, and strategy to help you accelerate your business and amplify your impact. I challenge you to be present, open your mind, and let the shift begin. Sometimes when we go from that first mountaintop to that first valley, we get so fixated on the fall. We were up here and now we're here. And all we can focus on is we went from this number, dollar, lifestyle, feeling to where we're at. And it's like we forget about where we came from. And I've seen a lot of leaders not being able to do what you did, not be able to retrench, maybe have to go generate an income to start a new run. I'm curious, two things. One, if you've seen that and some people just get stuck in the valley. But you guys made it through twice. What makes you different? What's the mindset, or what did you do to not get stuck in the fall mentality and be willing to say, hey, we're going to set a new run? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I would say, of course, our faith, that played such a great part of it. If I may also be a little transparent, that it may help someone else who may be right now in a low place after having seen success, tangible success I'm talking about right there, because it wasn't easy every day to do it. And I remember back during the food stamp years, just hearing in my spirit the word self-sabotage. Now, this was a word, or shall I say 2 words, right, that I wasn't accustomed hearing. Now we're hearing so much about self-sabotage. But at that time, no coach, nobody had told me, but it was the Holy Spirit that told me that. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is this about? And I began to look up the definition of self-sabotage, and I was like, oh my God, these characteristics I have. So what God began to show me is that, where I want to take you and Gregg to, and what you guys have been through, it really is not a lot about you, but you really being an example to show other people that if you do build wealth, or if you do have success and you lose it all, you can still do it again. And so he was like, really impressing upon me, like, I need you to get your mind together. So there had to have been such a paradigm shift, shift in our personal, right? In our personal mind and our personal heart. And also the ability that if you did it before, you can do it again. And so during that time, I came up with a quote, like, when we didn't have nothing, right? And we had 9 people in the household, because we were not only taking care of our daughters, but my niece as well, because my sister had been through some things. So now we have all of these people in the household. And I came up with this quote, and I really need you all, for those of you who are listening to this section right here, to think about it, right? Because everything that you do, your response is your responsibility, all right? Not your success line, even your team. Like, it is contingent upon you moving, you taking action, you shifting, you changing, okay? So I came up with this quote that says, do not allow your down place to define you. I'm not the down place, right? Though I'm in it, this is not me. I'm created more than this, right? And then I came up with this quote that says, focus on the promise and not the pain. And so it was during that time where we literally had to walk that thing out. When now I'm not going to continue to focus on the failure, or what I deem even as failure, really, because it's all a part of the process, or the money not being in the bank when before I was seeing money, all right, being able to do whatever I wanted to do. I'm not focusing on that. I'm not focusing on all of these bills. Yeah, I'm going to pay the bills, but that's not going to be my focus. I'm not focusing on the wilderness, but I am focusing on the promise. What can change? What is going to be better? That's what I'm focusing on. And so I came up with the quote, focus on the promise and not the pain, because the more you focus on the pain, that is what is going to be attracted to you. And a lot of leaders, or those who even built success, right, in any industry, when they hit those times, that is why what is going to set you apart from the other person that also went through a major storm in their life, that what makes the people bounce back that you do see bounce back.
People will get arrested development where even because everything is about the development. We'll always becoming. That's why it's always level to level, season to season.
That's right.
But we've got to learn and reflect back on the previous season. So now when it even comes down to those transition moments where it's time for me to go to another level in another season, I'm reflecting back on who I was, what I learned, who am I to my core. And those are the qualities and characteristics that I bring with me to that next level. I look back and I was like, okay, we did it in this season, but how did we do it?
Right.
That's a mistake. How did we do it? And so now I bring those qualities of how we did it with me to the next season, and we start building on that.
Mm-hmm.
I love how you just gave us tools. You said take ownership. When you were talking, Greg, I wrote down the word like, we got to accept it. Doesn't mean we got to like it. Doesn't mean we got to agree with it. Doesn't mean we don't want to change moving forward, but we got to take ownership in your words and accept what we go through. And then Lenika, I love that. Focus on the promise, not the pain, where we're going, not where we are. And in that you said it wasn't about you. It wasn't about where you were or where you are. It's about the impact you're able to make. So I think all of these are great tools when we're in the valley seasons. So thank you for that. I am a believer that it's in the valley that is the value. And like you guys are saying, it's what prepares you for what's next. I'm going to shift the question though. This is weird because I can go deeper on, we can all go deeper on valleys. And I think it's important. But I'm going to go the other direction. This might be a weird question. No, we share a common friend and mentor in John Maxwell. I know you guys work closely with him. I've worked closely with him for a number of years, a while back. And I remember one time he said something to me that always got stuck. He said, Blake, be careful in momentum because momentum covers a lot of mud. So my question for you guys is the not valley season. So when you go back to that first year of the meteoric rise or the 10-year run, like when things are working, when you're on the high, when like, okay, momentum is here. What advice and perspective do you give now to people in this industry that are in the momentum season? What's the wisdom there?
I can tell you, this is something firsthand we learned, right? And this was when we started in this industry and it just took off, it soared. Right. So you're talking about that meteoric rise, right? But a lot of growth can be crushing too when it comes too much, too fast. So even when you're talking about in that momentum season, always being aware that I love how John Maxwell put that is covering up a lot of the mud.
That's so good.
So even today, as we're building, right? One thing that we know and we've done enough reflection back to understand is you've got to make sure you're building with a solid foundation. Your foundation has to be so solid. And so now you have to decide what is that foundation. Just like with every other company, you have different levels and different things in every company, but you've got to make sure that your base is what is that level in that business that there's going to be the greatest proportion of people, right? You've got to make sure that you're taking care of that base of people. Everything above that is going to really take care of itself. But you've got to take care of that base of people. What is it that this base of people need? What is it that will put money in their pocket or make them, or how do they define success? What is it that they need in order for them to remain happy? So even as we've built this thing a few different times, even as we're going forward with it, even right now, we're making sure that our structure, our cadence, if you will, it caters to that base. And a lot of times in this industry, people get lost in all of the high levels and the high ranks and, achieving this. Of course, they're there because you want people to achieve it. But knowing the dynamics of this industry, you've got to keep that base at a good place where they're happy and everything is moving. So even from a culture standpoint, it got to be a very given culture where people feel welcome, people feel happy. For the most part, people working 9 to 5s, they deal with a lot of the mess every single day working a 9 to 5. Now you want them to get off of a 9 to 5 and work this opportunity. But then over here, this opportunity from a culture standpoint, it's tore up. Right. Then they're not going to hang around because they deal with enough of that, right? So you got to make sure it's a good culture. You got to make sure people feel good. You got to make sure you're taking care of that base. You got to make sure that from a foundational standpoint, it's solid for you to start building up on.
A lot of times, even in this industry, we can start believing our own hype, all right? Mm-hmm. Ego can get involved. So that's one of the things that I would just caution anyone with is just that. Yeah. Like, don't get so high up on the horse, okay? Because just as business change and companies shift and, transitions are made and sometimes you have to pivot, right? The same thing with momentum. A lot of times when you're in momentum, things happen, but you're not preparing for the long haul, or the long. You're not looking ahead, and that can also really affect. It can also affect leaders. Mm-hmm. And so I would just encourage all of us, like when you are in a season of great growth and momentum, even if it's just a few years, like keep yourself grounded, stay humble. You don't know everything. You still have to learn. Talk to somebody to say, okay, we have this, so how do we keep it, right? So that we're not also squandering things, which is, that happens a lot in our industry as well. But then too, look at the people. Who can I help even more? How can I continue to serve in all of this? So,
but also
you laughing,
but also
it's such sound advice, and I'm laughing because I know it's true. I know it's kind of a weird question to throw at you guys because the values and the valleys. When you're in the valley, you build the muscle, you shift the belief, all the things you guys are telling. But when you're in enough valleys and enough mountaintops, you also realize there's stuff you got to remember when you're in momentum. Now, for those of you guys listening, we're not trying to scare you. Like, momentum is fun. You want to experience it. We're just trying to impart the wisdom that when you go into those seasons, I love how you said, Lenika, we got to stay grounded. There's things to be aware of so you can set yourself up for the future. I know you have a pretty interesting philosophy, if you will, on just opportunity and how opportunity is always there. Can you kind of elaborate on your philosophy and kind of what you mean by that?
Well, I study the stock market historically, and I like to know what has happened in the history of the stock market. Mm-hmm. And one of my greatest mentors is William O'Neill. He founded the newspaper called Investors Business Daily. He was the youngest man ever to buy a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. He was the most optimistic, positive person I ever read about. I had the good fortune of meeting him before he passed away. And he always had the paradigm, you live in the most exciting times in history. The greatest opportunity is in front of you. It's just a matter of creating and filling that niche mode. Whatever it is you want to do, I just know that the greatest time in history is right now. And we can look at the younger generation and we can say, you know what? But they're distracted. Yeah, they are. But you know what? They're also creating, like Mr. Beast did, a world of change that is going to change our playground of the direct selling world. I think we're in for the most explosive growth ever in history, because I believe there's an entrepreneur out there, and I could list several of them that have founded these billion-dollar companies, had these $100 million companies. There's an entrepreneur out there. Somebody, some distributor, some independent contractor is out there right now saying, what if I did this? Boom, we create this fishnet, this funnel of people to where they're jumping in our boat faster than any time in history. I know one thing for sure. The mission-driven entrepreneur is never going to leave us. The need for you and I to make or help others make extra income to pay for the car, the house payment, the kids' soccer, the college, the tuition, all these things, that's never going to go away. Neither is our industry. It only is a matter of time and simplification and letting it coincide with the technologies of the day. And we will see the biggest growth in the history of the industry.
You're firing me up, Dan. I like it. You're on fire today. And that's the truth, right? I mean, that's the absolute truth. Like,
it is.
I mean, I sit back and I geek out on just what people can do today, day one, getting started as a brand, right, new entrepreneur in their career with the access that is today. I mean, you said 7 years can't really be compressed down to 7 days or 7 months. It is a truly exciting time, but I love how you're putting our intention in the right place and giving us the language around it, because that has to be right, on point for us to attract and really welcome the opportunity that's there. I know one of your personal passions is really helping people kind of find their voice, right, and kind of step into their own, and obviously use entrepreneurship, direct selling as a vehicle to amplify that. Like, what does that mean to you? What does that look like to you as a mentor, as a coach, as a leader in helping people kind of find their voice?
Wow, it's just an incredible question. My main mentor, again, wrote a book about it. And here he is, the 25 most influential guys in the world, Stephen Covey, the cover of Time magazine. And all these years are going by, and Covey keeps speaking, coaching, training, uplifting, leading. And he's finally faced with a challenge. Everybody says, what's the next habit? What's after the 7 habits? So he writes an entire book on that. What you just asked me is in this 8th habit. The 8th habit is to find your voice. And here's the key. When you do, direct selling leaders of the world that are watching, newbies that are watching, everybody, when you find it, it's incumbent upon you and I to help others find theirs. That's why you get fired up every morning. How do you find it? Time, prayer, reading, meditating, writing down the specifics. Jim Rohn would say, if you're going to go to the ocean, don't just go with a spoon. Like, you got to take a bucket. There's like billions of gallons of ocean out there. All the knowledge in the world is right there waiting for you to say, I am a creator. A creator of what? Your voice.
I step back every now and then and think about like the power of our entire channel. And one of the things I love about being connected with Direct Selling News is we really do have the microphone to the channel. I mean, this conversation right here, right, based on you listeners that are listening to this, like, this conversation could reach the industry, right, if we want it to. Last stat I read, Dan, was somewhere around 115 million independent distributors, promoters, consultants, right, entrepreneurs that are passionately promoting different product service categories. My question for you is, if you had the power that you could snap your fingers right now, like Inception-like, and give all 115 million, right, entrepreneurs across the world one belief shift, you could give everybody one mind shift instantly, what gift would you give them?
I am worthy is one of the most difficult things for most people growing up in the world that we do. Beat up, beat down, the dark abyss. Most people, probably one of the most impactful moments in any meeting I've ever done in my life, I was in Edinburgh, Scotland. We came back from the break and I asked the audience of hundreds of people, what impacted you the most? I'll never forget it, Blake. Lady in the back left, all the way in the back, she stood up and she said, you told me I was good enough.
Wow.
I am worthy.
You are, and everybody hearing Dan's words right now, you are worthy. You are enough. Just as you are. And plugging into conversations like this are giving you what you need to unlock that power that maybe you don't even know you have right now. It's been amazing. And Dan, like I said, I want to leave time for anything else on your mind or heart or other closing thoughts, but you're not going to leave us hanging. So I got my pen out. Principle. Give it. What is principle? Talk to us.
I've always been fascinated because the first time I heard it, the first time I gave thought to it was, of course, Stephen Covey. And he says, give a man a fish, you what? Feed him for a day.
Yep.
Teach a man a fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And I thought that really doesn't explain principles to me. It does, but there's something more. So I had a chance to meet with a 92-year-old linguist who knew every Indo-European language. He was in his dying years. He was in his old folks' home, Arthur Watkins, Orem, Utah, retired professor. And I had a chance to ask him whatever I wanted to. And he had his jeans rolled up, his Chuck Taylor tennis shoes, Converse shoes on, the black glasses hanging off the nose. And I said, what is the origin of the word principle? Everything slowed down. The room got still as he closed his eyes and said, P-R-I-N, strong, P-L-E, channel. When you are living true principles, Those are the channels that move your life forward. That's why we don't want to mess with I am anything negative. We want to live in the truest of principles that I means exist, am means with God. What you write down follows you. What you say follows you. What you feel follows you. That is the origin of the word principle. And I hope that that is a blessing in somebody's life today.
Wow. I've never heard that. I never knew that, but my life, like yours, proves that to be absolute truth. Leadership.
Oh boy. LEA. I learned this from Kevin Hall, who wrote the book Aspire. Again, Arthur taught us this. LEA means path. DUR means finder. Are you going to create the system of simplicity? Are you using AI technology? Are you using every technological advantage you can muster to create the greatest onboarding system for your customers and team members in the history of the world? You do that, you serve more people than anyone else that ever has been served, and you will be at the top of the comp plan, top of the world, top of the Elon Musk, and the people that serve the most are the people that are worth the most.
I get the vibe that you're, I'm going to call it a dreamer. You know, I know you say that one of your kind of superpowers, like you have the ability to see a vision, and I get the vibe that you're a dreamer. My question for you is, and it might just sound like a silly question, but how do you see yourself having that ability to share a vision or share a dream? Is it something you've always had? You've always had the ability to see and always had the ability to think big? Is it something you've had to learn and develop? What do you do to kind of exercise that muscle of truly building a vision for yourself and a dream for yourself and sharing that with others?
Oof. This is so good. This is so good. I was never a dreamer. You know, I told you that that was not how I was raised. I was not raised to think that there was nothing I couldn't do. You know, it was very much like, like my dream was to be a newscaster when I was younger. And I loved Diane Sawyer. And I wanted to be Diane Sawyer, and I wanted to be Joan London, and like all these amazing newscasters when I was a little girl. And my mother said to me, you know, and again, she was trying to keep me safe, right? This is love. This is not like wanting to crush my dream. She was keeping me safe, but she was like, oh, honey, you know, that's 1 in a million. Like that's going to be because it's a tough road, right? Like our parents don't want us to go down a tough road. You know, going to Wall Street was a safe road. Let's just call it what it is. You know, I was going to go there and I was going to do okay. And I would have kept the same good, comfortable life all of my life. And our parents want that for us. They don't want us to go through struggles. They don't want us to go through pain and rejection and all of those things that real living is filled with, you know? But yeah, so I was not a dreamer. Okay. As a matter of fact, I was told that's scary. You know, that's not a really smart place to go, because that's just riddled with abandonment and rejection. So that was very much my you know, context around that. When I started at my company, I saw something bigger than me really quickly. Like, and again, I credit this to my North Star. I credit this to my higher power. It was so much bigger than me. It was not about the products. It was this idea of I was going to be a part of female empowerment. Mm-hmm. And that's a very broad term, right, Blake? I mean, I personally believe that we can only empower ourselves. I can't truly empower anyone. I can be an inspiration. I can be a motivation. I can be an example, but people need to empower themselves. And that idea of, wow, what does that look like? What does it look like to have tens of thousands of people that are all trying to find a bigger purpose, a bigger meaning, a more soul-infused life? And I just started thinking about it. Like, it just started with me thinking about it. And the thinking about it became journaling about it. And the journaling about it became actually embodying it. and feeling it in my core, like as if it had already happened. Okay. So in my mind's eye, I already had tens of thousands of people on my team selling tens of millions of dollars a year. It was done. And what I found when I started to really say, yeah, that's possible, I started to like radiate that out there in the world. And this was a huge shift for me. Okay. This was like the number one shift, is when I really started to understand the power of my energy. And so the idea of it, to the journaling of it, to the, daydreaming of it, to the actual embodying it as if it had already happened, turned into this magnet that I became.
So let's rewind, and you might have just given us the directive I'm trying to understand. But we all start as dreamers, right? I know you have littles. My son just turned 8, my daughter's 5, and one of the things I love most about this season of life is hearing them talk about what their visions are. My son's already saving right now for I don't know if you've seen these flying drone cars, the Jetson one. He's saving because he thinks it'd be cool to have a flying car to fly himself to school. Like they're able, when we're young, we're able to dream. Like we're able to dream without limits. We're able to have vision.
I was going to be
a lot of us, if we're honest, something happens, and it limits our own ability to allow ourselves to go there, right? We start to think, and then we get this inner self-talk of, come on, be realistic. No, that's not possible. No, that's not for you, right? Oh, maybe another life. Like all this stuff, probably because we went through a scenario where we fell down, right? Where we realized that we weren't
afraid to fail. We're all afraid to fail.
So let me ask you, to that person, right? To the person that's listening right now that is not allowing themselves to go there. And the minute they go there, they got that inner talk that shuts them down before they even can activate that dream and that vision. They are literally unable to have a vision or have a dream. And they hear you talking about how you're manifesting and create. Help us get there. Like, what would be your directive be to the person right now that just feels like they're stuck on their own ability to think big?
Okay. First step is you really have to evaluate who you're around. Who are you surrounding yourself with? It's really, really important, because big thinkers, big dreamers will just feed your big dream. But if you're around people that are similar to you, and I'm going to assert that if that's the way one of your listeners is living, they're most likely surrounded by people like that, because we truly do become the sum of people we spend time with the most, right? You've got to make sure you get yourself into a situation where you're going to get support on this. I mean, it needs to be supported. People can't do this on their own. The world is going to tell you you're going to fail. The world is going to keep you small. The world is going to feed you stories. I mean, our brain's job is to keep us safe and to show us, don't go there. It's very dangerous down that road. Oh gosh, there's a snake. There's that's our brain's job. So a couple of things. That's number one, is to really look at who are you surrounding yourself with. Number two, the power of meditation, Blake, is like something that I'm so passionate about, teaching and telling people to do, because your soul knows what's for you. Your head's going to tell you a whole nother story, but when you can really connect to your body, your heart, and your soul, it is never going to fail you, and you might fall and you might fail and all of those things. But what is laid on your heart is always meant for you. You're the only person that can block it energetically. And, another big shift for me in my own business and my own journey was to really stay out of other people's stories. Because I was told that this was a bad idea. And I was told that this was not smart. And I was told, stay where you are. Like, what are you doing? I was told all those things out of people just wanting to keep me safe. I mean, it was love. It wasn't that they were trying to crush a dream. It wasn't that, it wasn't that they were trying to say, oh, you can't do that thing over there. It was just their own perceptions and their own fears being projected onto me, their own insecurities being projected onto me. And so you have to be careful of that. You've got to be around the people that are saying and thinking and doing big things, because they're just going to give you that courage. We all need the courage. It takes a lot of bravery to step out and say, this isn't all there is. I want more. It takes a lot of bravery.
Take one of those moments where you were being humbled at any point in your 30-year career. Go to the place where maybe you were down in the valley, you were going through what you were going through. It wasn't a time of rebuild, but it was definitely a challenging time where you had to reinvent in some direction. What did you do in order to grab the power, in order to grab the energy, in order to grab the discipline to continue to power through when you were in that time? Because so many of us, we're going to go through it. We're all going to go through those times, right? There might be a listener right now that's going through one of those valleys right now. Give us some insight when you were in that moment, not now looking back, but when you were in that moment, what got you through? What tools did you develop? What did you rely on that allowed you to come out the other side?
So those are great questions. I believe this is pain plus reflection equals growth. So I like to be intentional. I'm very analytical. I like to look back and go, the words I like is I like predictable. In other words, what can I learn from this? So I can say it looks like this again. So when I approach it again, I can predictably get myself out, but it also becomes sustainable. What does that mean? It's not just something I can do for a day. I've learned it's got to be something I can do for a decade, and I can scale it and teach it to other people. So I have a career that's over 30 years. I've built the top of 5 companies. I've been in a place where broke would have been a good place to be financially, and I was emotionally devastated. I've built a business that currently today is over 13, 14 years old. I am back building again in the field because I just enjoyed that challenge and I want to bring what I've learned to the field. I've been 10 years as president of the Association of Network Marketing Professionals. And here's one of the most important ones that I can share with people: perspective. And what the thinker thinks, the prover proves. So this is so important. I can literally help anyone today get to where they need to go, because I think we've generally got 3 types of perspective. One is poison. In other words, it's literally killing you. And people bring to it, I am no good. No one wants my products. In other words, they have an absolute view of the world, and that is poison, particularly if it's negative, because what the thinker thinks, the prover proves. You'll go out and prove that. And people don't realize that, but I hear you talk about it. The RAS, the reticular activating system, if that is your RAS, it's going to find situations that will affirm those beliefs. And that is an absolute that I've learned over and over again. And so many of us don't realize that. And I will tell you that most coaches today are so want to be loved, they're not willing to be a coach. They always only want to be a cheerleader. So cheerleaders will only hug you. And when the only tool you have in the toolbox is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When the only tool you have in the toolbox is hugging, there's nothing wrong with hugging. That's a good place to start with the connection. But a hugging may need to move to a nudging, where you nudge somebody off their position. And it may need to move to a little bit of pushing, where you push somebody into a higher level, pushing somebody up to see a greater level of possibility. And how do you move through that? How do you help people through that? So go back to where that conversation, he said, Garrett, you need to rip all these things up. And that's something that I did, and I learned how to do that. We don't have time to go into all that right now, but when you learn how to do that, you create a new conversation. Your reticular activating system looks differently. In fact, if we have time, we can talk about it, write it down. It's called the golden hour. I learned a precise way that I've used over 30 years to help me and anyone else change their reticular activating system, rip up those notes, and to do it on a daily basis. Because if you can't do it, it's got to be something that works for a day that you could ultimately do for a decade. I've done it now for 3 decades. Number one. So in the golden hour, the first thing that I do is I pray. And I take a few minutes and I just say the Lord's Prayer, I say 2 or 3 prayers, and I pray from a place of gratitude. The next thing is I write 10 pages of a good book. So why do you read 10 pages of a good book? 2 reasons. Number one, it cleanses you of the day you just had. Remember I said resentment, frustrations, you need cleansing of the day you just had, and you need to be inspired, and you want to be challenged to have a better day. Because if all you can do, you saw me speak about this in the DSU, get 1% better every single day. In other words, get the slight edge going in that direction, that upward curve. That's what you want to do. You want to be in the upward curve, not the downward curve. In other words, you got to be able to do the things on a daily basis. When you're in the invisible results, they're going to take you to where you want to go. So that's the first one, prayer. Like I talked about, 10 pages of a good book. So when you look at that, then the next thing that you want to be able to do is you want to use this formula. V times I times E equals your new reality. And your new reality is what your reticular activating system is going to move to. We all know the first one. And by the way, I got this from a guy called Dr. Bandura, who's considered the grandfather of psychology. And I was blessed to be with Lou Tice. And I asked Lou Tice, who run the Institute of Education, and I was sitting down over lunch and said, what's one of the most important things you've learned? He said, it's this. We all know visualization, Blake, but that is only 1/3. In fact, it's less than 1/3 of this powerful formula. We all create these vision boards, and nothing wrong with that, powerful, and we all learn how to vision. So that's one. But number 2 is I, which stands for imagination. And what imagination is put yourself in the picture. In other words, you imagine yourself, let's say a few years ago, imagine what it's like to be with your wife and your current 8-year-old son and your 5-year-old daughter, living in the home that you're living in, you're running up and giving you a hug, you're inside in your house, the car that you're driving, in other words, you imagine the movement through the vision. And that takes it to a whole nother level of visualization. Now comes into your imagination. But here's the key. Times E, which is the most powerful piece, which is the emotion. What emotion do you feel? I saw you smile when I met, when I mentioned your 8-year-old, mentioned your 5-year-old, you know that when they jump into your arms, that those hugs, that emotional piece is the key. Because what that does is it takes you into gratitude. Like you can go through it and go, and just imagine describing this like it's in the past and it's already happened. So V times I times E equals your new reality. I can walk anyone through it if they have challenges with it, but it's a way to move your reticular activating system in the right way. It's a way to be able to rip up those pages. Does that make sense? To do it in a sustainable way. Now, here's the next part. You've got it. Emerson said, do the thing and you shall have the power. Faith without works is dead. Most people leave it there. That's not going to work. You got to quickly now then review the day you just had in 30-minute increments. Just quickly look at the day you just had in 30-minute increments, and then design the next day in 30-minute increments. In other words, what are the things they're going to put in? What's amazing is your reticular activating system is now moving towards that new vision, imagination, emotion. It'll actually bring forth you doing the things. Do the thing, you shall have a power. In other words, Emerson said, do the thing, you shall have the power. Much rain weareth the marmot. Doing the little things so that are going to get you there. And you just set up a new calendar. Imagine doing that every day. And here's the last one. Write down the most powerful lesson you learned from today that you're going to invest in tomorrow. So that you're intentionally going to take that learning from today and invest it in tomorrow.
And for those of you that are listening right now, he just gave you a system. Garrett, what I heard you share is your system, more than just personal growth, right? You can call it a personal growth development system, but a system that I hear when you share all of this, it's a bunch of different modalities, different lessons you probably collected from the best of the best as a student from 30 years that has taken you from all the challenges that life threw in front of you
now to rewiring, right, into a mindset that is absolutely invincible. Guys, take that, right? I wrote it down. V times I times E, right, equals R, which is amazing. So thank you for that. For everybody that's listening, I hope you grab that system and immediately implement it. You try that for the next 30 days. You're going to start seeing noticeable results.